Sharon Treat, and I am a senior advisor to the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy, IATP. IATP is a social justice organization that works on trade policy related to food, agriculture, climate change, sustainability, and rural communities. And I recently completed a report for IATP on the impact of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP, as proposed. And we have also looked at CETA, the Canadian agreement, which is up for consideration by each of the national parliaments of the European Union member states. So it's a very timely report that looks at what the impact of these proposals are on food and agriculture. And what we concluded is that both agreements will strongly promote the most intensified industrial agriculture, particularly in the meat sector, and lead to a lowering of food safety and other standards that are very important to people in Italy and the rest of the European Union, including pressure to accept genetically modified foods, pressure to accept meats that are treated with chlorine and other washes instead of sanitary conditions from farm to fork, which is the European approach and standard, and pressure to reduce the impact of the precautionary principle, not by repealing it outright, but by creating a so-called living agreement that will result in regulatory cooperation discussions long into the future, without having the transparency that we normally associate with a more democratic process, and that will put trade considerations and impacts on business as a higher level of consideration than the impacts on consumers and what consumer desires might be. So the report that we did, here is a copy of it here. That is available on the IATP website. We also did this report on CETA. And I think one thing that's really important to understand is that the Canadian system of industrialized farming is very, very similar to that in the United States. So under CETA, you do not have necessarily a more positive outcome, because the Canadians have been just as forceful at challenging country of origin labeling, which they did for the United States. They have been also participants in challenges to the EU's standards on hormones in beef. And they have been very clear, both in their private sector and their regulatory comments, that they do not support the precautionary principle, and that in fact these trade agreements for both Canada and the United States are a way of chipping away at the precautionary principle and the controls over chemicals and pesticides, GMO, and ongoing food safety provisions that are popular in the European Union and are basically considered the way that food should be handled. So and this is, as I said, both as a result of the regulatory cooperation provisions, but also there's provisions in both agreements relating to labeling, which will make it far more difficult to have required labels, and whether that's on ingredients or additives in junk food, or whether it has to do with future labels on animal welfare, or whether it has to do with labeling of packaging that might be around food and might have bisphenol A or other chemicals in it that affect people's health. So between the labeling provisions, the regulatory cooperation, and also the reduction in tariffs, which will put these much more cheaply produced factory farm meats and other agricultural products in a much more competitive position versus the European farming, and will really continue to drive away from family farms towards the most industrialized agriculture. So I encourage you to take a look at our reports. They are on the IATP website, which is www.iatp.org.